This is Nick with logosbynick.com, and in today's tutorial I'll be demonstrating how to take a text object in Inkscape and customize it with details and make it a little more unique and distinct using this font here, which I've provided a link to in the description. So before starting this tutorial, please download and install that font before opening Inkscape. And this technique tends to work best with fonts that are simpler, that have flat edges and sharp corners. I mean, it can work with a more detailed font. You'll just have to put a little more time and work into it. I chose this simple font here because I wanted to make sure this tutorial was understandable for everybody. But once you understand how this concept works, you should be able to apply it to other fonts. It'll just take a little more time than these simpler fonts. So with that being said, let's close out of this and get started. The first thing we'll do in Inkscape, let's set our view to custom. And then let's zoom in at 100%. And then we'll open our Align and Distribute menu with this button right here. Make sure to have Last Selected chosen from that drop-down. And then we'll go to our Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Strokes. So the first thing we're going to do is create our text object. I'm going to grab the Create and Edit Text Objects tool. Click on the canvas, and for this tutorial I'm just using the word ink. So I'm just going to use all caps. I'm going to hold Shift, INK for ink, and then we'll open up our font editor, and we'll find that font that we installed, which I believe was SF Collegiate. Probably pronouncing that wrong, but there it is right there. Go ahead and click Apply, and then close out of that. And then I'm going to take our, the Select tool right here, and hold Control and Shift and click and drag on this object to make it bigger. I'm going to make this pretty big, maybe about that size right there. Holding Control and Shift while doing this. So the next thing I will do is let's convert this from a text object into an actual path. So let's go to Path, Object to Path, and then ungroup it with that button right there. And then click off of the graphic to deselect everything. Now I'm going to space these letters out a little more. They're a little too close together for what we're about to do. So I'm going to hold Control on the keyboard and click and drag on this K and bring that off to the right a little bit. And then I'm going to click and drag over all three of those objects and come down here to the Distribute panel and make horizontal gaps between objects equal. Go ahead and click on that and then group it together with this button right here. Group Selected Objects. We'll just group that back together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click this and go to Duplicate, and I'll turn that red and then ungroup it with this button right here, and then go to Path, Union, and then I'm going to send that to the bottom by lower selection to the bottom. Go ahead and click on that, and then I'm going to give that a red stroke. We could do that from the stroke panel right here, but since I already know what color I want to use, I'm just going to hold Shift on the keyboard and click on the color red down here. So go ahead and click that, and you probably won't be able to see it on my screen, but that created a tiny little red stroke. But what I'm going to do now is go over to the Stroke Style tab, and I'm going to give this a pretty thick stroke, maybe 15. We'll type in 1.5, hit enter. Now I'm going to go a little thicker than that. I'm going to try 2.0 and hit enter. And that should work. I'll just use that. And then go to Path, Stroke to Path, Path, Break Apart, and Path, Union. And then let's go to Edit and Duplicate. And with that duplicated copy, let's turn that blue. And then let's click off of the graphic to deselect it, and then click back on that graphic. And then send it to the bottom, lower selection to the bottom. And then I'm going to shift this over. I'm going to shift it over to the left and down a little bit using the arrow keys on the keyboard. So using the arrow keys, I'm going to press this over a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to bring it down the same number of times. So I used 8. I went left 8 times, so I'll go down on the keyboard 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that looks pretty good. So what that did here is it's creating a little bit, it's creating the illusion of a drop shadow, but these edges are not connected. So we're going to go and manually connect these edges. So go ahead and click off of the graphic to deselect everything. And let's grab the Bezier pen over here on the left. And then we'll come up here to the Snap to Custom Nodes tool. Snap to Custom Nodes, go ahead and turn that on. And then snap the cursor onto this corner right here. and then snap it onto this corner and click, and then just bring it through there and close it back up, just like that. So what we did was we drew a shape to fill in that corner right there. So what I'm going to do now is, with this Bezier tool still selected, I'm going to press down on the mouse wheel, and that's going to allow me to pan the page over. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And you could do that by holding Control and rolling up on the mouse wheel, or just pressing plus and minus on the keyboard. Either one should work. I'm just going to want to zoom in a little bit to see what I'm doing here. Let's snap it to this corner and click, and then snap it to that corner and click, and bring it through the object here and connect it back to the beginning. I'm going to press down on the mouse wheel and pan the page. Come over here and do the same thing. Let's fill this corner in by snapping and clicking. Connect it back together. The same thing over here. Snap and click. Snap and click. Connect it back together. Press down on the mouse wheel to pan the page over. Snap and click. Snap and click. And I'm pretty sure you get the point by now. So I'm going to press down on the mouse wheel and pan down here and do the same thing to the bottom. Grab this corner right here. Then I'll get this corner over here. Press down the mouse wheel and move the mouse over to pan the page. Snap and click, snap and click. Bring it through the object and connect it right there. Same thing right here. And I think we should only have one more after this. Yeah, one more to go. Grab this one for the letter I. And there we have that. So let's press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out. And you can see all those objects that we drew. Let's turn our snap to cusp nodes off. We don't need that. And we'll go back to our select tool. And let's hold shift and click on each one of these little objects that we just drew. While holding shift, so just go ahead and click them so it selects all of them. And with them all selected, go to Path, Union, and then hold shift and click on the blue object over here. And go to Path, Union. So you get the idea. That was what we just did right there. That was the point of doing that. So what we could do now is click off of the graphic to deselect it and click on the red segment right there. You'll know you have the red one selected because you'll see this little red stripe down here in the bottom left. And then hold shift and click on the blue one so you have them both selected. And let's right click that and go to duplicate. And then we'll unify that by going to Path, Union. And then we're going to turn that black and send that to the bottom. Lower selection to the bottom. And then we're going to give that a black stroke. So hold shift on the keyboard and click on the black color over here to the left. And that should give it a nice thick black stroke like that. That's exactly what we want. And then we'll go to Path, Stroke to Path, Path, Break Apart, and Path, Union. So the next thing we're going to do is, let's click on this red object right here. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to hold Control and roll up on the mouse wheel to zoom in. And then I'll click this red object right here and right click that and go to duplicate. And then hold shift on the keyboard and click on the blue object and go to Path, Difference. Then what I'll do is I'll click this red object, hold shift and click on the black object behind it, right above it right there, and go to Path, Difference. And then we can press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out to see what happened there. We now have this right here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to give some lines. We're going to create some lines to go through this blue segment right here. But before we do that, let's click and drag over this whole thing and group it together. Just like that. And then let's come over to our Create Rectangles and Squares tool. And let's click and drag on the canvas. Let's make a nice long rectangle going over this thing. And I'm going to turn the stroke off on that thing because it's on by default because we just created one. So hold shift and click on the X to get rid of that stroke. And let's give this a color that we can see when it's overlaying the object. Let's make that red. And then we'll go back to the select tool and click on that. And let's grab this arrow and let's bring this in. Let's just make this pretty thin. Maybe about that much. And then I'm going to bring this up here by that eye. And then I'm going to click it a second time to get the rotation handles. and then hold control and roll up on the mouse wheel to come over here to the left side. We want to make sure we're grabbing this little arrow in the middle right here, not the top or the bottom one, but the middle one. And I'm just going to hold control, and I'm going to click and drag that down a couple of times. Let me move this up a little bit. We want this line to be running parallel with the edge of the eye right there. So I'm going to press down on the mouse wheel. I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit. Hold control and roll down on the mouse wheel to zoom out. And then I'll hold control and grab this arrow and shift that over a little more. And then we'll move it up. We'll see how that looks. Alright, that's good. We could use that. So once you get it to about that position, press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out. And let's hold shift and click on that graphic, and let's center it on the horizontal axis. So it should look something like that. And then we can click off of it to deselect everything. Now let's take just this one right here, click that and hold control and move this up to about here. And then right click that and go to duplicate. And then hold control. My menu seemed to have got stuck there. Duplicate, there we go. We could hold control and we can move this copy down to about here while holding control. And then press the space bar to make a copy. And hold control the whole time and just slide it down and press the space bar, and you can make copies of this. So I'm just going to make a bunch of copies. Oops. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to hold control and roll down on the mouse wheel to zoom out. And I'm going to click and drag over this whole thing. And then I'm going to hold shift and click on the ink object to deselect that, so we just have these red lines selected. And then I'll right click that and go to duplicate. And then I'll hold control and click and drag these duplicated copies down here. And then I'll do that again, right click, duplicate, bring them down, holding control while doing that. Right click, duplicate, hold control, click and drag them down. And instead of doing this a few more times, I'm just going to click and drag over the whole thing. And then I'm going to hold shift and click on the ink to deselect it. Right click, duplicate, hold control, bring them all down. And that might be enough. Yeah, that should be enough. So once we get there, let's click off of it to deselect it. And let's click and drag over just the ink portion. Don't click and drag over all of the red rectangles. Once you get that selected, raise that to the top so we can grab it. And then we'll click and drag this over. We don't need to, we need that out of the way for what we're about to do next. So once you've done that, click and drag over all of those red lines. And in order for them to be spaced out evenly, mine aren't, I accidentally decentered mine, so I'm just going to center them up on the vertical axis. And then I'll come down here to distribute, make vertical gaps between objects equal. Click on that. And that should space everything out evenly. And then we can unify that together by going to Path, Union. And then we can press 1 on the keyboard. Actually, we are zoomed out. Let's come over here. You press down on the mouse wheel to pan the page over. And let's go back to this object. And let's ungroup this. Click that once. And actually click it a second time to ungroup the letter ink as well. So we click that twice at least. And then we'll take these red lines. Let's raise them to the top with this button. Raise selection to the top. And then hold shift and click on the blue object. And let's center that on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. And I'm going to pan the page over to look at this, see if everything looks good. Yes, everything does look good. And once you have that set up, let's go to Path, Intersection. And then hold shift and click on the black object on the far left over here and go to Path, Difference. So we end up with this right here. So the next step is I'm going to create sort of like a makeshift halftone pattern going over the top of these letters. And in order to do that, I'm going to come over here to the right to get out of the way of this. Let's go to our circles and ellipses tool. And let's hold Control and Shift on the keyboard and click and drag and create a perfectly round circle. And let's convert that to a path. Let's go to Path, Object to Path. And we'll go to our Select tool. We'll right click that and go to Duplicate. And then hold Control and click and drag this all the way up about this far. I might even go a little higher up, maybe even up there. And then we could hold Control and Shift again, and let's scale this thing down really small. We want this thing to be a tiny little speck. I'm actually going to zoom in and scale that down a little more. Maybe about that much, and press 1 to zoom back out. That's how we want it. We want that size and about that size. Let me just get a measurement on that. That looks like it's 2.4 pixels by 2.4 pixels. And this one is 46. So that's just to give you an idea of the size disparity between the two of them. So once you have that set up, let's click and drag over both of them so we have them both selected. And go to Extensions, Generate from Path, Interpolate. And for Exponent, leave that 0. Interpolation steps 11. Interpolation method 2. Duplicate end paths. And we're going to click on the live preview just to make sure that this looks all right. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave that just how it is. Go ahead and click Apply. And after that, close out of the menu. And then we can take this thing and click and drag it off to the right over here. And let's ungroup it and go to Path, Union. And then let's click and drag over these original two and press Delete on the keyboard to get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. So let's take this thing here, and we're going to make a bunch of copies of this. Let's right click it and go to Duplicate, and then click and drag over both of them. And let's choose this button right here. Align left edges of objects to the right edge of the anchor. Go ahead and click on that. And then unify them together. Go to Path, Union. And we'll do that again. We'll right click this, go to Duplicate, click and drag over both of them. Align with that button right there. Path, Union. We'll do that again, maybe one more time. Duplicate, right click, duplicate. Click and drag over both of them. Align them to the right edge. Path, Union. And I'm actually going to do this one more time just to be safe. Right click, duplicate. Click and drag over both of them. Align right edges right here. And then go to Path, Union. And then let's take the opacity and bring this all the way up. And actually, let's flip this vertically, because that's how we're going to use it. Let's flip this, flip selected objects vertically, sort of like that. And then let's take this thing and let's bring this over here. Let's bring this over the wording right here. And let's bring it right there and hold Shift and click on the letter I and align the left edges and align the top edges. And then click off of it to deselect everything. And now we'll click on just these red circles right here, this little halftone pattern, and hold Control and click and drag this down so it scales it about this much. You don't want this thing to be too small. You want it to be wide enough so that it'll fit in these other letters. So I'm actually going to enlarge this a little bit. Just hold Control and click and drag. And yeah, that's pretty good. So let's put this over here, and I'm going to zoom in right here. Hold Control and roll up on the mouse wheel. I'm going to position this circle right here so it's going off of the edge of the letter I. And I'm going to move these circles up a little bit so that they're going like halfway through the edge of the I right there. And I'll bring the opacity down to show you. You see the horizontal line from the letter I. It's going about halfway through those circles. So that's about where I want it. Then we press 1 and zoom out. And let's right click this and go to Duplicate and hold Control so it stays in the horizontal plane and click and drag this off to the side. And then we'll take on these we'll click these red ones, hold Shift, click the letter I, and go to Path, Difference. And then we'll take these red ones over here, we'll right click that and go to Duplicate, and hold Shift and click on the letter N, and let's center that on the vertical axis, and go to Path, Difference. I think something went wrong there. Yeah, some kind of glitch happening there. It happens sometimes. Let me try that again. Now, you know what we could do if that happens to you? This happens sometimes when you're working with a large volume of nodes like you see here. Sometimes you get these little glitches. What you could also do is you can click on the letter N and right-click that and go to Duplicate. And then hold Shift and click on the red ones, click on the red pattern, and go to Path Intersection and see if that works. No, we're getting the same problem. So what I'm going to do now is let's click on these red patterns right here. I'm just going to add new nodes in there. I'll go to the Edit Paths by Nodes. I'll click and drag over all of them, and this is going to be take a few seconds because this is very requires a lot of computer power to do this. So my screen might gray out a little bit here for a second. Did it work? Did it add those? There we go. Yeah, so let's go. Once it adds the new nose, we'll go back to the select tool. And then we'll try it again. Let me try doing the path difference. Nah, same thing. Alright, so what I'll do is, let's try it with the letter K first. I'll put it over the letter K and go to path difference. Alright, it worked there. And let's take this one. Maybe this one will behave differently. Somehow I don't think so. I'll bring this over the letter N. Hold shift, click on the N, path difference. Okay, then it worked for some reason. Okay, so here we have our word ink. Let's click and drag over the whole thing and unify it together. Let's go to path union. Let's see if it works. Okay, that worked. And the final step is to add the grunge texture just to make it look like it's actually written in ink. So I've included a link to that in the description. Go ahead and download and save that grunge texture to a folder where you can easily access it. And once you have, we'll go and import it into Inkscape. We'll go to File, Import, and you go to your folder where you saved it, and it should be right here, grungetexture.svg. And there it is, right there. I'm going to hold shift and click on the word so we have them both selected and center them on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, and then click off of it to deselect it. If you don't see it on my screen, it's because it's a really small file. It's a really small graphic, but that's okay because it's a vector. And this requires a little bit of computer power as well, so this may behave a little slowly on your screen. It's behaving extra slow for me because I'm recording this while doing this. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift, and I'm going to scale this thing up, all the way up, so it's about the size of the graphic. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to hold Control and roll down on the mouse wheel to zoom out. And then click and drag over the whole thing, and let's see if it works. Path difference. Any problems? Okay, it worked. So, one last final step. Looks like I'm getting a little glitching in there again. Oh well. One last final step we can do is we can click on this a second time to get the rotation handles and grab this little arrow right here to the right, and we could just slide that up a little bit just to give it a little bit of an accent. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and end this tutorial here because my computer sounds like it's about to freeze up. So if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this works out better for you than it did for me. And as always, thank you for watching.